It's a, I did want to discuss the kind of where we are. We had a real good year. I wanted to pass this card out if I could to everybody. We do have, this gives you the last essentially 6 years claims, and kind of gives you the average. We had a real ugly spell last year, 2013, starting in September, and that ran through January. 2014 has been a great year for us. If you look at the claims, you'll notice over here in red shows a 4-year average of $4,700,000 in claims. That is actually, our claims in 2014 were actually below the 6-year average. And in addition to that, our claims in 2009 and 2010 were both higher than they were this last year. So we've got just a really good run. It means we've got probably a little bit more reserves than we need. We've got almost $3,100,000 in reserves.
How much?
$3,100,000. That's Chelsea got it. And so we're almost $3,100,000. We really should be in that 2.6 million range. The reason we do that is because there's essentially a minimum that the Division of Insurance establishes for a self-health plan. And without going into too much detail, that would be about $1,500,000, $1,600,000. There's $1 million gap between what we expect to pay in claims and what we actually would pay in claims that we could be liable for. So if we've got enough to cover that gap and the minimum reserve, we're in great shape. That would put us at 2.6 million. Even if we have $500,000 in claims in March, we'll still be at 2.6 million, which is right where we should be. So I would hardly recommend and compliment the employees of Woodbury County, because if they weren't doing the things that they need to do to stay well, if they weren't participating in the wellness program, doing those kind of things, and I don't know if Denny minds if I say, but Denny's a shining example of what happens, what the positive results can be of participating in that health and wellness program. And because of all of those things, we've been able to financially get to the point where we do have just an exceptional claims run and plenty of reserves.
So this will amount to what?
Would it amount to a premium holiday for the month of March, which puts, I believe, $290,000 back in the general fund.
But the actual dollar amounts, when you figure it out, the actual dollar amounts, when you figure it out, for the insurance holiday on general basic would be $259,783. For general supplemental, it'd be $45,160, and for rural basic, it'd be $14,609. How we worked this in the past, and hopefully this is how we work in the future, when we give an insurance holiday, we'll go back in when you amend budgets in May, take this 1 month out of everybody's budget, so it can't be spent there. We still transfer the money over to these funds, like general basic, to put in reserves to be used for tax reduction or our shortfall in our general basic. And general sup and rural basic would be a tax asking decrease. It decrease our tax asking by these amounts.
So 290 plus how much?
290 plus 14, it's around 400 some thousand when you figure out secondary roads and everything else, but those really don't affect us because they just go back into reserves to be spent for projects within the roads or case management or county mental health.
So Ed, with this, we would still be above the 2.6 optimal.
Yes, we would still be above 2.6 million. Claims have looked real good the last 3 months running. I know we've got another claim that's out there, so we may see a month with 500,000 in claims, but even at that, if we had that 500,000 claims, it would put us right back to where we should be in reserves. So, and it's a great thing for the employees too. It's not a bad thing to have a little bump in your paycheck unexpectedly.
And these claims don't follow the Mercer medical trends by year. It just depends on what we get as far as claims, right?
That's correct. I just showed what the claims would have like had we been average each one of the last 6 years, and they kind of tend to go off the chart. So we've again, hats off to Woodbury County employees. They're doing the things that they need to take care of themselves. Our claims with essentially the same population as we had in 2009 are lower than we were in 2008 in March.
So we need a motion to approve premium holiday.
So moved.
Need a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
I've got a question. It would have been nice to have this ahead of time. What are the dollars?
The dollars are for the general basic, $259,783. For general supplemental, $45,160. And for rural basic, $14,609. For case management, because that is gonna remain a county fund here, not the region, so that's $9,150. And then obviously you have some secondary roads, county library, but those are separate funds that really doesn't affect our tax asking.
No, but it affects the premium holiday.
Yes.
So what's secondary roads?
That I never even calculated. The total amount comes a little over 400,000. The only word of caution I'd say, and I've said it before when we've done it over the last 3 or 4 years, this could be a one-time thing in this fiscal year. Next year it may not exist, so then we'd have to find other revenues. But if our trend keeps going, instead of having our premiums bounce up and down all the time, this is the way you give it back to the taxpayer through these holidays. We could have one next year, we could have 2. 2 years, or this current year, the year before, we didn't have any holidays. The year before, we had 2, then we had 2. So it does jump around a little bit, but that's just a word of caution. That's just the name of the game when you do holidays, put in reserves. It could happen down the road, but we're hoping this is something that could happen again.
Yeah, and I am really cautious on this. We've bucked the national trends almost 7 years in a row now. Your luck's only on your side so long. I mean, we've done a lot of things proactively to try to make this work and to try to make it good. But eventually, something bad's gonna happen, and we're gonna see those years where we're gonna have to pony up.
But we still have a sufficient amount in our self-funding.
Oh, yes, very sufficient. Again, even with, after the premium holiday, we'll be in a position that most self-funded plans would be in here.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. All right, building services certificate of completion. Want to speak to that?
We did have a certificate of completion, I can pass that around, that we're proposing that they use in all circumstances. It's just a way to help hold the contractors accountable.
I think we have it, but
Oh, you do have it, I'm sorry.
our homework, that's okay.
That's and then this is just essentially for approval of this. There's patterns after some others that we found. Just points out the building service department and the direction of the building superintendent shall be the representative to the board of supervisors in all negotiations, contracts, specifications, and designs. Furthermore, it should be the policy that the building superintendent be involved in the understanding the scope of the work, designing, directing, and interfacing with all outside contractors as the board's representative. Building superintendent shall submit for approval to the board a recommendation regarding signature of certificate of substantial completion when satisfied that his or her personnel are properly trained on all equipment, manufacturer's warranty, service numbers, and service-related items. And so this is just a resolution that would go with it, and I believe there should be a certificate of completion.
I think this is critical. When we did the project in the jail, building services was trained on every single piece that went in there with the exception of computer programming, which is beyond anybody's scope at this point.
Yes.
We need to have this happen in all situations so that they have the manuals and understand how to make that stuff work, fix it, or know how to refer to get it done. So
Absolutely. I think it's critical. It just makes proper management. Get the experts involved, we have a better outcome.
and if there's an architect involved, it's customary to have them as the project manager, and they go through line for line and item for item. But then that leaves all of those things related to manuals, training, making it function, still on the sheet.
Yes, and the warranty information is so critical.
Yes.
As we found with our access elevator. We've had a couple of issues there, and the warranties we're all under warranty, so everything gets fixed. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, I note that this is the same in terms of topic and subject as item number 13 on the agenda. And just reviewing both sets of language, which I understand our Assistant County Attorney has reviewed and feels comfortable with. I note that under number 13 that you had brought forth a line that says when an architect is retained as a project designer and manager, a joint recommendation will be submitted to the board covering the respective areas. And so I'm wondering if the Human Resources Director has any
Can you add that line?
Yes, absolutely. We can have
does that bother you at all, Ed?
No, not at all. Not in the least. We're input from some of our expertise is always good.
I thank you very much for your work. So then I would move that the Woodbury County resolution of the certificate of substantial completion for contractors that the HR director has put forward be adopted with the addition of the language under item number 13, starting with the phrase when an architect is retained.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Very good.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you, Ed. Going back to number 6. Mr. Peters, we would like to hear about our audit.
Couldn't get out of another meeting. You should have a copy of the 2014 audited financial statements.
Uh-oh, excuse me. I have a time set. Can you wait just a second?
Yeah, sir. You bet.
All right, at 10:15, we will have a public hearing and sale of property parcel 651855, also known as 308 Main Street West, Smithland, Iowa. Is there anyone to speak for or against the sale of this property? Hearing none,
The hearing be closed.
need a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Now, the sale of property, 651855. Is there a bidder? And your bid is? Your name is?
Holly payment.
Okay.
The minimum bid $759.
Does that include? Yes, it does. Okay. Anyone else wish to bid on this property? Come on, we need money.
Chairman, move the bid of Holly Paving be accepted.
Need a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. If you would like to go out that door and around over here, and she will take your money. Thank you. Sorry, Jeff.
Not a problem.
Back to Williams and Company.
All
Thanks.
right, you have had a copy of the June 30, 2014 audited financial statements. Got a couple new faces, so I'll probably spend a little bit of time talking about how it's put together and those kind of things. The report actually is what we call a comprehensive annual financial report. The county has made the commitment several years ago, many years ago actually, to complete a comprehensive annual financial report and submit this to the Government Finance Officers Association for recognition for quality financial reporting. And they have received that award for, I don't even know how many years, maybe 13 consecutive years. This report has been submitted to GFOA to continue that. The report itself is put together pretty much in a pyramid form. There are really 4 sections to the report. The introductory section, which includes just basic information, a copy of last year's certificate of achievement, organizational chart, various things like that, transmittal letter. The middle section, the financial section, if you will, the tab, is really what you pay us to do, and that's the audit of the financial statements. We'll talk about that in a little bit. The statistical section, the 4th section of the report, is primarily 10-year trend information on everything from valuation rates to property tax levies, fund balances, gives us a real good history, a picture of where did we go, where were we 10 years ago from to compared to where we are today. And then the last section, what we titled the single audit section, is a significant amount of what we do as auditors when we audit government financial statements is to test compliance with laws and regulations, both at the financial statement level and then specifically on those federal programs that are required to be audited. We spend a lot of time on that. So that's really how the report's put together. If you turn to page 14, which is the first page after the financial statement tab, you'll see the independent auditor's report or our opinion on the financial statements. It says we have audited these financial statements in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards, government auditing standards, and then ultimately also OMB, Office of Management Budget Circular A-133. Those are the rules that we have to follow as auditors to properly complete the audit and put our opinion on that. The top of page 15 is our opinion, and this is really what you're after. The financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects, and in accordance with those with government auditing or generally accepted government accounting principles. It's an unmodified opinion, meaning we feel the financial statements are fairly stated. That's what you're after. The financial statements themselves begin the next several pages, page 17 through about 25, are management's discussion and analysis. It gives your staff an opportunity in narrative form to kind of compare this year to last year. So a decent little read anyway, just comparing current year to prior year. Beginning on page 25, 26, and 27 are what we call the government-wide financial statements. The entire operation of the county is combined into really two sets of numbers, SUA and District Health, and then all of the other operations of the county are combined into the governmental activities column. This lists out all of what we, on page 25, lists out all of what we own, what we owe, to come down to a net equity or fund balance net position, if you will. If you look at the governmental column, the first one on the left, you'll see the total net position is $91,860,000. That's the amount that the assets exceed the liabilities of the county. Now, the biggest number there, almost $77 million, is fixed assets. That's the roads, that's the bridges, buildings, equipment, all of that kind of stuff. The available assets that are unrestricted of that $91 million are $5.8 million, the very second to bottom line there on page 25. So again, this is a good broad brush. This is throwing everything together in one set of numbers. You can't make good management decisions from these because we have combined everything, the general fund with secondary roads, with rural services, and that's a requirement to show one set of numbers. The detail by fund is presented a little later in the report, and that's where you're going to be able to look at it and say, okay, how's my general fund look? How does my secondary roads look, and so on. On page 26 and 27, you'll see the statement of activities, again, at the combined level. So it's everything, again, grouped together for the county. But I like this because it starts with what did it cost us on the left-hand side? What did it cost us to provide the service by the various functions? And those functions are set out by state code. Those are the budget categories, if you will. So, for instance, if you look at the very top of that, public safety and legal services, you can see the total cost of providing that service. We then subtract from that the charges for services, revenue that is generated directly from that service, specific grants related to that, coming down to a net cost on a second to last column on page 27. So it costs $12.2 million after our revenue to provide the public safety legal services services. That number then, that net cost, is paid for by what are called general revenues. Those general revenues are primarily property taxes and local option sales tax. And so those general revenues are listed below. I like this statement in that it gives you one big look. This is what it costs us to provide all the service. I don't like it in that it combines everything into one set of numbers. And again, from your perspective, you need to know what each fund balance is doing.
Is non-program miscellaneous?
The non-program, those are they are budgeted, but they don't fit into one of those very specific categories. And
What they amount to is things like refunds when we do tax redemption, things like that, that can't really fit into an individual department division. So we have non-program, we have refunds.
the Government Accounting Standards Board sets the rules as to what gets reported in your financial statements, and that's who lays out these standards. One thing to keep in mind, beginning next year, we're very fortunate in the state of Iowa to have IPERS, and for the government employees, it's a very well-funded program. But beginning next year, any unfunded piece of IPERS and your county sheriff is going to get recorded here as a liability at the government-wide financial statements. Good part is IPERS has to tell us what that is, so we don't have to try to calculate it, because there'd be no way to do it. I am anticipating that number to not be tremendous. I think IPERS has a pretty well-funded program. As an example, you look at the city of Detroit and you talk about the billions or trillions of dollars of unfunded pension problem that they have. That's now going to show up on the financial statements. It hasn't in the past. So it will have an effect on your overall net position, but I'm really anticipating it to be fairly small of an effect. In my opinion, kind of the meat of the report really begins back on page 31, and these are, we identify what are called major funds. Those that are big, really primarily the large dollar funds, are listed individually here in the front of the financial statements. Every fund of the city is listed individually someplace in the report, and then it just kind of builds as a pyramid, starting with the smaller stuff grouped together and then carried forward to the front. But if you look, the general fund, first column on the left-hand side of page 31, third line from the bottom says that our change in fund balance in the general fund, the fund balance went down about $979,000 from 2013. That is the equivalent, and I'd like to calculate this number, it's the equivalent of 83 days of operation. If you take the total expenditures in the middle of the page, $28,204,000 or $204,000 divided by 365, cost you roughly $77,000 a day. If you divide that by the $6.4 million, that money, if you stop getting revenue, would last 83 days. The year before it was about 94, 95 days, so you can see it's coming down.
Is there a best practice number that
Yeah.
you throw out?
If you think about your revenue stream, you're going to get two big revenue checks a year, one October 15th and one April 15th for property tax. You get a bunch of other little stuff during the year, but you're going to get two big checks in your general fund. So if you think about that, you need somewhere in that 90 to 120 day fund balance would be, I think, an appropriate general fund balance. You're not in bad shape at all. The general fund's solid, but it is, if you think about that revenue stream, you don't want to continue to see that 12 or 13 days a year. And that gets difficult as I talk to governments all around Northwest Iowa. One of the things that the counties have probably a bigger challenge than most with a bunch of the unfunded mandates that come down from the state level. And so your hands are tied a little bit, but you really have to balance that, that revenue stream. So that being said, $6.5 million sounds like a big number. It is, and you have a nice fund balance. It's probably a little skinny from what I would recommend. The other funds, mental health, rural services, secondary roads, I don't know if there's anything tremendously unusual or earth-shattering in there. You can see a couple of fund balances, primarily in secondary roads, $5.4 million. You'll see that happen because you'll build reserves in there and then a big project will get done and you'll get that secondary roads fund balance. So you'll see that one move up and down kind of annually. The next several pages are the footnotes, gives us an opportunity in narrative form to kind of explain the numbers in a little bit further detail. I guess it's important too to note, these are your financial statements. We assist in putting them together, but they're your numbers, your financial statements. Our job is to decide are they fairly stated. So I don't know if there's anything ever shared in the notes that we need to talk about. Again, I mentioned the 10 years worth of statistical trend information in the stat section. And then if you flip to page 108, which is the first page behind the single audit, you'll see the scheduled expenditure of federal awards. And there are two schedules listed in here, one for the county and one for Siouxland District Health. It is treated as what we call a component unit. But for the county side, $1,380,000 of federal money was expended. One of the requirements as auditors is we have to audit at a minimum for compliance at least 50% of the total federal expenditures to make sure that you are not only spending them in accordance with Iowa code and basic financial statements, but that you are spending that money in accordance with the grants and the requirements of the grants. Our opinions on both financial statement and grant compliance and internal control are related, are presented at the back of the report. And then there's a schedule of findings, which is just a required schedule. We have to list out any internal control weaknesses or any compliance issues that we have. If you compare this to prior years, you're going to see the same control findings. We have no compliance issues that we identified, no material compliance issues. Overall, you have to be very pleased. I think that financially you're in a good spot. You want to, I caution that you don't want the general fund to continue to go down, but you're still in a very manageable position.
Anything we should be doing different? Stay out of trouble?
I think, I think in general, from the auditor's perspective, we were told if we had some real significant issues, and we don't. So, I don't know if there's anything we would have to change specifically.
Questions?
That's as quick as I can talk about it. So,
Well, based on what we pay you, we need to have you talk that much. Questions? Need a motion to receive.
Move it.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
one thing I would offer to the big guys is if you want some time to spend a little time with me on how to understand what it looks like, I'd be willing to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
My pleasure. Thank you, guys. Thank you, sir.
Okay, going back to number 8. A, approval of lifting tax suspension for DD. Need a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Mr. Palello, are you out there?
He is.
Morning.
This morning, we want to hold a public hearing for adoption of the county's floodplain management ordinances. To refresh your memory, we're specifically requesting the rescinding of a map panel in rural Woodbury County, which represents a little over 2 square miles. The actual amendment of the map doesn't impact any property owners, structures. The map panel in question included part of Sioux City, and as a result of their floodplain study of the Floyd River Valley. We're simply going through the administrative process of updating our map panel 037 to conform to FEMA's requirements to continue to offer subsidized flood insurance for our citizens throughout the county, as well as qualify for disaster grants and loans should we ever have a significant flood event. We are asking specifically of the hearing address rescinding map panel 037B, adopting map panel 037E, and then adopting the new the new flood insurance study dated March 2nd, 2015. I'll answer any questions the public or the board may have.
So we're in hearing.
Pardon me? We're in the hearing.
Questions, comments? Hearing none.
The hearing closed.
Need a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay.
And now I think we vote on the second reading of the ordinance.
Need a motion?
Move it.
Need a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Thank you.
One more time, right?
One more time, we'll be back next week, I understand downstairs next week, is that the plan?
Yes.
And we'll do our third reading and formally make the ordinance adoption.
Okay.
John, you still around?
Yeah.
Rural Economic Development, Mr. Gleiser.
David Gleiser, Department Director of Rural Economic Development. Just wanted to review the state bids that John and I received for new vehicles for our respective departments. We worked with the Sheriff's Department on getting the bids. There are two state bidders in the state. One is actually located here in Woodbury County, and the other one is in eastern Iowa. And so you have that information before you. John, if you have any comments or anything about
Nothing other than our particular scenario is a little bit different in that we have a trade-in of the existing vehicle that our department's been using the last 7 or 8 years. One of those bids does not take trades, the other one does, so we equalize the dollar amounts by using Kelly Blue Book trade-in value. I think both our bids are well below the previously budgeted amounts for replacing the vehicles, or in this case, buying new ones.
In your case, we have set aside money over 3 years.
3 years, we set aside $8,000 each of 3 years, so we were told the vehicle could be up to a cash outlay of $24,000 plus the value of the trade-in.
And you haven't gotten to this for a year. So it's like 3.5, 4 years.
Yes, it is. We apologize for that. Timing just was better.
Right. And we're taking yours out of what?
low cost of sales tax?
Right. Need a motion.
I've got a question. Are you buying a pickup, Dave?
Yeah.
Do you have a need for a pickup?
Yeah, for, some of the events in the rural communities, there might be a need to haul some tables or something, some chairs from like City Hall or the community center to an event location. I'm not, I guess, I looked at the sizes of both vehicles, and pickup seemed to be more convenient, but I'm not opposed to taking a smaller vehicle if that's what
I'm just
important.
wondering about the use of it, that's why. Mileage should be a lot better.
Yeah, and I thought of that too. That truck does have a bigger motor, so it's really, I guess, what the pleasure of the board, what you would prefer.
I don't have any trouble with it.
Well, you do put on a lot of miles, so the mileage would add up, and the gas would add up significantly over time.
There's some ancillary values to at least our floor. We kind of work as a team up there, and obviously planning and zoning could periodically see the use of a pickup in some of its meetings and issues it gets involved in. It's our 2 cents worth.
Take a motion on these 2 vehicles. I'll move it. Need a second.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. All right. Item number 2.
Just wanted to provide the board with an update, thank you, John, with an update on some grant activities that the department has been involved in. First of all, last year, the Rural Economic Development Department collaborated with the Sioux City Economic Development Department. They were the actual grant applicant. Other project partners would be the Siouxland Initiative, the Mars Area Chamber of Commerce and Development, and the Monona County Economic Development Department. We submitted a grant to the Iowa Economic Development Authority for a regional marketing project.
Mr. Motson, before you go on, Assistant County Attorney pointed out, were there different bids that were submitted?
There were 2
There were
different bids
two.
per vehicle.
Were you designating which to bid to accept.
The local
The
bid.
motion should specify which bid you're accepting.
Which bid, you have two bids, which one are you recommending?
The local,
Was it cheaper?
yes.
Okay, John?
It was the same thing
Same thing.
in our homework.
Was there an addition to the bid? How did that bid work? I thought I saw something with the total package, was that an option, or was that in the bid?
Yeah, we were advised that the trade-in value would be greater with that accessory
Is that on both vehicles then?
on both vehicles, correct?
It still fits within whatever
Yeah.
amount it was,
Couple thousand below what we're out.
Good?
but that's part of the bid.
Correct.
Okay.
You're good?
Is everybody else good?
So your motion was to accept the Woodhouse bids for both vehicles, Woodhouse being the local bidder.
So our motion should be amended to say Woodhouse.
No, I'm just writing the motion, I just want to clarify what the motion actually stated.
Okay,
So that's what he was asking.
we're okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Good. So back what I was saying, Sioux City Economic Development Department was the actual grant applicant. These other entities were project partners. And Iowa Economic Development Authority had a opportunity where every dollar that we would invest locally for our match, they would give us $2 on the return. So our total was $7,850 is what we put in for our local match. We received from them $15,700, giving us a total project budget of $23,550. These funds will be used over the course of the next year for various efforts related to entrepreneurism. There's a big push right now in the field of economic development to support entrepreneurs at the local and regional level. So Monona, Plymouth, and Woodbury County will use these dollars for a number of activities over the course of the next year, which will help support some of the efforts and initiatives that we're involved in. So I want to provide you with an update on that. Second update I wanted to provide you on was with regards to when I came in here in December, talked about 2 grant opportunities that we could apply for assistance on new website development for the Rural Economic Development Department. I submitted a grant and was approved through Mid-American Energy's Local Partners Program for $2,500, and also one through Woodbury County Rural Electric Cooperative's Business Development Assistant Fund Program, and was awarded $1,500 for that. So the total of those 2 awards were $4,000, which will go towards the overall project of $9,500. So roughly was able to acquire 42% of the funding for that. So that's a good thing.
So we need a motion to accept the grants? Is that what you're looking for?
That, and then after that, I have a request for another motion.
Okay, need a motion to accept these grants?
Move it.
Need a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay.
My
You don't
last-
have any more action items here, so
Well, I would like to ask the board for permission to apply for another grant through Mid-American Energy's Local Partners Program. This is for professional development. Later this year, I will be attending a workshop in Blue Springs, Missouri. It's put on by Heartland. It's called the Heartland Economic Development Course. It's a 5-day economic development course that goes towards certification for a certified economic developer certification, which is a 3-year process. But this is the first step in that process, that 5-day long course. It's put on by the University of Northern Iowa, and it's for professionals in economic development in the Midwest. Cost for that event is $860, and I would like to submit an application to Mid-American Energy's Local Partners Program for $860 to cover the cost of tuition.
can we do that through consensus?
I think that it would fall within the agenda item that you have. I mean, ideally, it should be broken out. but it falls within the update on grant activities and opportunities, so you can make a separate motion for that.
Okay.
You got a deadline on this application?
No, I've just been told that the sooner the better because they receive, they start calendar year, so they'll start to accept applications for all the different various aspects of what they will fund. And this,
First come, first serve.
exactly, it's first come, first serve, and also the tuition for the event is $100 less if you register before March.
Okay.
Do we need board approval in order for you to apply for this grant?
That's something that, when I was talking to the auditor's office, I was informed that that's the process, so that way, when money comes into the county, there's a record.
Right.
Why don't we give him consensus and put it on the agenda next week?
Well, he said it falls under the B.
Yeah, I think you're okay to do it today.
Yes.
The language of the department wants to apply for $860 to Mid-American Energy for professional development expenses is in our packet from an email dated January 30th. So just, I guess in the future, just try to get it separately on the agenda, but I don't see any problem moving on it today.
Need a motion?
Move it.
Need a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Go get those grants.
All right, thank you.
I just want to clarify that item B, that you took the action on to approve those grants, you accept those grants. If somebody's signing those, or was there a signature involved, a document, or on those grants?
When I submit them,
Know when you get them back.
You're asking for board's approval to accept those grants. Is there any signatures involved, a document?
no, I just know that checks are coming, so. When I went and spoke with Gene and asked how do I receive that,
Whenever it happens, you need to work with the auditor to make
Well,
sure.
that- I'm just trying to get out front of what you're talking about, because that's what we do, is when you, that's what I was referring to when we had a discussion, is that when you apply for a grant, you should give the board's acknowledgement so they know that they're getting it, and that's how we know that the grant is possibly coming, and then when you come to the board, just like what you did here, we're getting notification that you did, the grant application was successful, and that money's.
Okay, you're good to go. All right, PJ. Is he out there? There he is.
Well, thanks for having me again. I'm gonna just pass these numbers out to you guys. What I've done is I've just given you the initial startup cost of what it's gonna take us to get in that office and get it up and going, so that we can get this process ahead of the game finally. If you look on there, we've got the filing cabinets, the desk, the printer, 3 computers, the door cutout kit, which we're gonna put some thick plexiglass in there. Mike Hedgett's office is gonna handle that for us. They already got the cost. I think they got the kit lined up, so they'll put that in there for us. The phones with licenses, we need the licenses. That's coming through John Malloy's group, as well as the computers. They'll hook it up for us. The one thing that I did look into is the amount of money that we can pay through forfeiture funds. So we're gonna cover a large chunk of this, and I noted that on there. The amounts that I don't think we can and should include the forfeiture funds is listed with the phones and the licenses. That's something that the county's still gonna have to put for us. I also put down there the future costs of what we're gonna need, that one support staff that I kind of mentioned to you last time. Once we get this up and going, we're definitely gonna need at least that one support staff person. Right now, these are based on dollars, approximate dollars of what a similar position would be in our office based on current contract dollars. These are full salary and benefits, so this isn't just salary. So that's kind of what we're looking at right now. There may be some other minor costs that come up. We may need to replace the carpet in there, those kinds of things, but that's later on down the road right now.
So down the road, this thing's gonna pay for itself though, right?
That's the whole, that's the whole, correct. one thing, the two things I actually need from you guys as far as the action piece is saying, okay, yes, PJ, you can use that office or that room for fine collections, as well as we're gonna transfer the use of what's being done in that room now, which is John Malloy's group, stores, computers and whatnot in there, as well as I believe Mike Hiddick's group has tables and whatever they store. We're gonna transfer that over to the old mail room. And then they'll just have to look for where we're gonna set up the baskets for mail collection and that kind of thing.
Okay, so there's two things you want here. One is about $1,700.
That's what I'm gonna need from the board as far as upfront costs. A caveat, and again, hopefully it's a good thing, is that I'm guessing the board can expect us as a county office to return at least $1,700 from our budget, just looking at our numbers this year. So it should cover itself, but that's something that we just need to get approved up front in case it doesn't work out that way.
Well, I'm very optimistic. Need a motion.
Those taxpayer dollars, I know you guys are looking at me now.
Need a motion to provide $1,700 out of
Riverboat,
gaming dollars.
gaming dollars, yes, sorry.
Move it.
Need a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Now, the second item is,
To approve the use of the room.
all right,
Transfer over to the mail room for what's currently being used in that room now.
Move it.
need a second?
Second.
Discussion? Mike, are you ready to do all that work? Just say yes. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. You're good to go.
Thank you.
PJ,
Yes, sir.
the support staff, is that going to come in on your regular budget?
It will be, what I'll have to do is come back to the board once we get it up and going. There's a couple things I'm gonna come back to the board with. You guys have asked me to say, okay, can you give us a good faith, I'm gonna call it a good faith estimate of what kind of dollars we're looking as far as collections and possibly how soon we can do it. So I'm gonna try to estimate that for you. These dollars at that point, when I come back to ask you for that, will be to ask you to support my budget for that staff. Now, when I come back, I'm hoping to come back within a 3-month period. So it's actually gonna be during this current fiscal year that you may be looking at funding that. If we can stretch that out, we'll look at doing that option. I'll talk to Dennis about possibly stretching that out, but I'm just not sure we can accommodate that because it's probably looking at about another 2-month time period.
Is there any sort of statutory timeline as far as when we have to have this in place, or we would not
No.
be in compliance with anything?
No.
Okay.
Yes, Dennis.
One thing he does get out of these fine or cap program, he gets a certain percent, I think it's 20%, which should cover his costs. So we wouldn't have to go back to tax dollars or anything like that, but it's gonna take time to get this running, but he does get a certain percent to cover his costs, I believe, for operations within the attorney's office.
Well, there's a caveat to that. Initially, the county gets a cut of the money up front for all the dollars that are collectible. Our office, which is what I'm hearing you saying, we don't get anything until we collect a threshold. And for our population, the threshold is $400,000. So it's very unlikely we're gonna reach that number anytime soon. So, but we're hoping to do that in the future, but for what purposes that Dennis is talking about right now, that is probably not gonna happen that soon.
We've heard, and I'm not gonna use the number, but a county north of us has pulled in a lot of money.
Right.
So that is a possibility.
It's a possibility, but I don't.
We won't talk about the numbers today.
Now, my concern is just getting it in the budget for next year.
Right. I'm gonna have to work with Dennis, as to the timing. Right now, it's a timing issue. Because of the June 30th is the end of this fiscal year coming into the next budget cycle. So what I'm actually gonna have to do is not only work these new dollars into the budget, but the 2 employees, and thankfully I've informed those 2 employees, so everybody in my office knows, we're actually gonna be moving 2 employees from the juvenile side. They're gonna have to come to the adult division side. So there's gonna need to be a transference of dollars within there. So one may show a big negative, but the other will show a big positive. But the net overall effect should be nil.
And then what we'll do is set up a separate department division. It'll be under the county attorney with a division specifying cap where we can show exactly what it's costing. You like this administration is Edward Byrne Grant or juvenile attorney's division, and we'll have a cap division.
Okay? I think we're good to go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sheriff Drew.
Morning. Oh, you want me to start just talking?
Sure.
Okay. Since taking office, a number of attorneys have asked that some of their clients were unable to get to the Prairie Hill facility, or the fact that it was difficult for them. So if we move the electronic monitoring to Trosper Hoyt, we gain two things. One, the opportunity to put more people on electronic monitoring because it's local here, they can get that ride, take a bus or however. But also it helps Mr. Olson, Juvenile Court Services, and it would allow us to have a uniform presence for a couple more people in a building that has been unsecured. So I think I know talking to Mark has talked to Major Stallman, I think that's something that would be a benefit. I talked to Gary Niles, the Chief Probation from Juvenile Services, and he had an office available, but I think the fourth floor has been something that has been decided as a good office space. And with the problems with juveniles and some of the court actions and then the family members and all the things that go with that, we would have somebody there most of the time, and I think it's a large benefit for that building. So with that in mind, that's what we're looking to do, is move it to that location.
Can we use the equipment you have out there?
I don't see why not, unless you're telling me something different.
No, the equipment goes, are you talking about the EM equipment?
Oh, no, the desks and chairs.
Oh, yeah, we're gonna try and get as much of it done in-house, find the laptops and computers, and we'll take most of the stuff that's out there.
And we don't anticipate anything new, so.
The only thing we're looking at is that equipment does have to be secured. The EM equipment is rented. We do not own that equipment, and that has to be secured. And Wendy Christensen runs our EM. She's got with Mike, and they've already worked out how to get that
Cool.
accomplished.
You could probably get Mr. Gleiser's pickup to move that stuff.
Oh, we have plenty. They're cheap. It's the lowest bid there is in state in pickup trucks.
Any other discussion?
Do you have an area picked out, Dave?
Yes.
Mark and Greg have worked all that out.
It's on the fourth floor.
It's between the old ICN room and the classroom. It opens into both of those, so you're gonna have to secure those. And then there's a door into the hallway, which I assume will be used for people going in and out.
But there is a separate hallway for that area you'd be working, correct?
Yes.
No, we're talking different. We're talking about, for the ICN room, there's a hallway by Stephen Rory and the intake department. This isn't the back hallway that we take it back, because they're saying they need it secured. That back is a fire escape, so it can't be secured.
Okay.
I don't have a problem with this. I think we ought to go up and make sure where it's at.
You've been up there.
Greg has and Mark has.
I know where they're talking about.
And I've been up there. I think it's perfectly unused space that,
Is this what you showed me the other day, Mark? Okay.
Our two concerns are being able to get the people in there. It takes about an hour and a half to hook somebody up on electronic monitoring, the whole booking process. And that our equipment is secure. And we went with Mike and looked at various places up there, and this was the best fit for our staff to be able to get that accomplished and still be available to everybody in that building should a security incident arise.
Need a motion?
I would move that we relocate the electronic monitoring to the aforementioned area in Trosper Hoyt.
second?
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. There you go. Item number 14, since we've done 13. Implementation of employee recognition, customer service. Mr. Taylor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to ask the Director of Human Resources to address us and show us a possible resolution format. For the public's information, this is a certificate by which we can honor those in the community who've demonstrated selfless service, a way that our board can recognize such volunteers, and this would move between each board member to put forward some resolution and go through the chair. So with that, Mr. Gilliland. And
thank you, Jeremy. My name is Ed Gilliland, First Human Resource Director. We have a resolution here. The first one that we handed out is for a citizen of Woodbury County. And we've got a second resolution that would be a similar format that would be for employees. We think it's a good idea. Currently, we recognize employees at 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, and 40-year anniversaries. And we actually do have people that can even qualify for those 40-year anniversaries. I know Sheriff Bruce got up here real soon with 30 years. Well, maybe, so we do have people that make that those marks. So I think it's great when we do, and we want to be sure we recognize them.
Show that around. Okay, discussion?
And I think we also want to use this as a step beyond with employees as well, just to recognize potentially really outstanding things that they've done for the county, as well as just using students.
Discussion? Comments? Need a motion?
Do we need a motion?
I guess it's discussion, I'm sorry.
well, I'd just like to thank you, Ed, for your time in your office. I think it's a good thing. I think you've done it with professionalism and class, and so I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Maybe you'll be getting one of these certificates here pretty soon.
Yes.
Okay, item number 15. The board will discuss the county's philosophy and policy for funding the various programs. This is not an opportunity for nonprofits or organizations to present their case for funding. This is strictly an opportunity for the board to begin defining direction for the future. This will be an action item in the next 2 weeks, probably next week. Who wants to start? If you use the information I put in the packet, I have a hard time placing programs that are match money to draw down from other programs like federal, state. The example being the Housing Trust Fund. We put in $15,000 along with 4 other counties, and it draws down, it's drawn down pretty close to $1 million. That's a pretty good return. Siouxland Regional Transit Authority, I think we put in $35,000-$40,000 for that, and their annual budget's $2.5 million. Without that, we would lose the CERT's Siouxland Regional Transit System in Woodbury County. And we are the largest user of that system, which has 50 buses. The Senior Community Services Employment Program, we put in $10,474, and it draws down $340. Meals on Wheels, we put in $50,000 or $15,000, and it draws down $329, $330 in reality. So the basis of that group, I have a hard time putting them in a pot. The Woodbury County Fair, if you look in your packet, Dennis found on the internet all of the counties that participate in providing funds for the county fair. Most of them. There's a few that don't. One contributes $280,000. I think that's Polk County, which makes sense. Woodbury County Library, again, most all the counties, I think we levy a tax. We don't really have a choice.
Correct.
So we participate in the county library. Nonprofits that we've funded in the past, we're getting into the concept of the use of gaming funds or tax dollars. The gang outreach program started in '92. It's been a great program. We're using tax dollars to fund this. If we took all the personality and the history out of this, we would never approve a program again like this that was funded through tax dollars. That's kind of my opinion. I open it up to the rest of you.
Mr. Chair. I think the question we have to ask ourselves is it the role of county government to fund nonprofits, particularly through taxation? It's a question that the Taxpayers Research Conference, the Sioux City Journal-Public, I believe, has asked. We are starting with $919,503 in expenditures over revenues in general basic. We've been able to bring that down to $822,041 through different cuts. Through the tax insurance holiday down to $562,000 rather. But I think it's a discussion as we go through the budget process on what are core services, what are we mandated to fund, such as public safety and secondary roads, nurses in our jails that are overstressed, overspent, and taxed with their abilities to provide services that opens up a real liability. And so I just wanted to make sure the public's aware that currently we have the Sanford Center in the past has been taxpayer funded at $186,925. The Phoenix Project, or Project Phoenix, historically at $131,000. We also have the county fair. Those are the three that are taxpayer funded. And then I see that we have 6 others that are funded through gaming revenues. And so I just think for the public's information that's important. And I believe that we're in a fiscal state where we need to make decisions based on what is mandated of us, what are core services. And I know that there are other ways that are 60-plus nonprofits in this county raise funds through private donations and through fundraising and so on. And even through MERD, which is a very good organization which has done wonders and some very good things, but in some cases funded the same requests even over and above what the county has through gaming revenues. And my last comment would be that gaming revenues can be spent on anything from equipment replacement and lower the tax askings that we have some real challenges with. And so I am of the inclination that I think similarly that we ought to look at where are we getting federal funding. CERTs, we put in $33,320. It's 18 times what we're getting back from the federal government and match, so around $600,000. I can support where we are drawing down federal dollars. I think that makes sense to county taxpayers. But I would have a much harder time supporting things that are not mandated of us and that don't fit that criteria of being core services. And so those would be some comments that I would have.
This is going to be a hard discussion, and it's not going to end today. Our board has set a precedent, a unique precedent of funding several nonprofits with a consistent stream that has not been subject to an RFP process, as we all know. And so, as new members, speaking for myself and possibly Jeremy as well, it's an uncomfortable position for us to be in. But I'm mindful and optimistic of the public's ability to address this as a community. We do have 3 pots for funding nonprofits. A lot of people don't realize when they ask about, is the county going to cut this or that? We do have taxation, we have gaming revenue, and we do have 3 supervisors that sit on the MERD board. That has been since closed to other elected officials joining due to bylaws. I don't want to put mandated county funding against non-mandated nonprofit funding. I don't think those belong in competition. I don't think Sheriff Drew's obligation to protect the public should be placed in competition with nonprofit funding that serves a excellent course of service, but it is still, we as a county are facing a budget shortfall, and if we were to instigate an RFP process for any of these, the two pots the county controls, that would necessarily put those two at odds. As we budget, we have virtually one income stream, as we all know. I don't want to teach nonprofits to do what we're trying not to do. We're trying not to use one-time funding for ongoing expenses. And what we've had, although it's been relatively consistent, has been one-time allocations of funding to certain nonprofits. But that's what we've done, and so that's why we have an unfortunate discussion of laying off people that's hit the media. This is not my intent at all. I think, but I'm encouraged. I went back and I researched some fundraisers. You know, the tailgating for our kids event a few months ago raised $197,000 for the Boys and Girls Home and Family Services in one day. That's more than the county allocated a whole year of taxes to another nonprofit that we previously funded. So the money, you know, the money is out there. But this is, as stewards of your dollars, it's a discussion we need to have, and we're having it right now. I agree with Jeremy wholeheartedly that if there's a function of funding that is disproportionately matched, as in certs, I think it's 14 times we put in, that's a no-brainer. That doesn't require, you know, in my mind, any further action. We went to ISAC and heard how their budgets are constructed, and heard about how something like CERT's regional transit system would be classified as a transportation funding item. There's other items on here that we now know are a little misleading if we're talking about nonprofits, mandated funding to the county library, you know, things like that. But the impression that nonprofit funding with taxpayer dollars gives is that we have an excess, and to be truthful with you, we don't. And so to keep the promises that we made to you, that you demanded, that you know where best to put your money, I agree with Jeremy, and that the course that I will support will be that we will not pit mandated county services in regards to public safety and other issues against non-mandated nonprofit funding.
I don't believe that's ever been done, but go back 10 or 15 years ago, I thought similar to the way you two are talking. But then, and Mark knows this, there's not a dollar savings that's, you know, visible. But if you take any of these programs that have been funded and eliminate them, and you harm those programs, what is the end result as far as cost to the county?
Sure.
If you fill up the juvenile detention center, because we do not have a Sanford Center or something like that, with the outreach programs to the schools, you know, what are you doing? To cut some of these other programs, you're funding it with non-taxpayers' dollars, you're funding it with riverboat funds, you know, as long as they last. So those aren't even in the discussion. What the discussion would be is, which ones do you want to fund? You've got a complete binder with all the applications for funding from the nonprofits. Go through them, let's hash it out here and see what, you know, you want to fund or you don't want to fund any of it. But to cut outreach programs, the cost is invariably going to be greater than what you're spending on these programs. And that's something you just have to, you know, I think experience is a good word. You know, I'm not trying to be condescending, but you take one juvenile more and put in that, in the juvenile detention, and you're gonna be kicking out a paying individual from the BIA or Dakota, North Sioux, wherever. So if you do that with 3 or 4, that's more than the cost of what you're paying for outreach. Plus, what does it do to the social fabric of the community? The gangs that we had developing here that have been circumvented or held down, the sheriff, I'm sure, could testify to this. If you do not have these programs, they're gonna come back again. And what's the cost of that? What's the cost to the community? Not only in tax dollars, but quality of life. I could talk about this all day long, and I don't think that I'm gonna do any good. But there is, more ramification to this than simply dollars in, dollars out. And you have to see it, or you have to experience it, or go out and visit these programs, or talk to some of the people in the community that are, actively involved in it day to day. And they're gonna tell you, you do away with some of these programs, and it's gonna cost you more than what you're putting into it.
Can I just clarify one thing, if that's okay? 2 of the nonprofits are funded through just taxation. That we're talking about, the Sanford Center, the $186,925 is not gaming funds.
That's correct. I was talking about the one above.
Okay.
And those are all non-gaming funds, or
And
those
then-
are all gaming funds.
And then Project Phoenix, which was once federally funded, in which
And we picked that up
Right.
because here again, we thought that the service it provided, the people it kept out of the jail, far exceeded the money we were putting into it.
But
You can disagree
that's
with
why
that,
it's,
and that's fine.
that's
And
why
I
it's.
was on the same page with you when you were, because I think initially you had said when the federal funds ran out, that was your understanding that would go away and that county taxpayers would not pick that up. And I agreed with you. And I thought that was a very cognizant point to make. But I just wanted to clarify on those 2, or 3, including the county fair.
So I agree with the Mr. Clausen of 15 years ago, I guess. I think it's unfortunate. It is about a precedent that the previous board has set, but we have a new board. This is not a zero-sum game. If we step back, we're not preventing anyone else from stepping forward. And to be perfectly frank, the ongoing discussion of this issue for a few months or even a few years has led to a lot of publicity for these organizations. That's not to be patronizing at all. That's just an encouragement. There is any ways that we can personally help out, that we can cheerlead. That's absolutely what we intend to do. And you've seen the board adopt, ways to honor people that we can honor. But we're dealing with looming budget shortfalls. I've been in meetings with 2 other boards of taxing authority that I'm on, and it does not look good down the road, whether you're talking mental health funding or other grants drying up. And we've had a federal grant dry up, and the county stepped in and decided with the Phoenix program to take on the status quo, and that worked for a few years. But if we open this up even more, that sort of thing is going to happen again, and the ship of county government is going to sink under the cargo of its own good intentions. And I think that's something that we need to be ultimately responsible for.
Jackie?
Woodbury County has traditionally allocated dollars and programs and initiatives that go up and down the juvenile justice continuum. We have teen court, we have mental health court, GPS trackers as some examples. the prevention dollars that I think are incorrectly grouped with other nonprofits is at the front end of the continuum. Right now, it's a public-private partnership. It does target the racial disparity in our juvenile justice system. In the adult system, Iowa is third in the nation in incarcerating African-American males. David Gleiser, before he came to us, managed the Casey Foundation grant. We have been able to reduce our racial disparity in our juvenile detention center. This is one such program that adds to that, along with a whole lot of cooperation between all the entities that work in this area. I think it's just common sense that front-end programming is much less expensive than incarceration. But it also gets to what really is important, because you can look at jail admissions, holds as criteria, but the prevention dollars also target families, keeping families together, keeping kids in school, setting them on a path to become productive members of our community. I think it's very short-sighted to stop the funding, and I think we have been, in our minds, grouping it in the wrong pot of money and the way we think about it. This really is an initiative to keep kids out of juvenile detention, and not only that, to make sure that we're not harming the safety of our schools or environments by not placing them. So I would urge us to keep this funding. If we need to look at tightening up controls of it, that's fine. If it takes a different form or a different shape somehow, I think we have plenty of people that are very interested in this topic. But I just think it's so easy to cut this. And I won't be around for the effects, because it will take a while for those kids to slowly creep back into the system, end up in our jails. And not too long ago, there was Other Voices. Journal does editorial, and it was a study done in South Dakota. And they looked at the juvenile justice system, and the fault that this commission found was that there wasn't enough front-end programming in that system. They were incarcerating kids for minor offenses. Well, I just think it seems so backwards to cut this at this point in time, when we have worked so hard to get that racial disparity down. And then now, today, this is less than 0.5% of our budget. It's over $300 a day to incarcerate a juvenile. The prevention dollars somewhere, I think, are between $50 and $100 a day. I think. I might be wrong in that. I don't want to be quoted on that. But it is much less expensive. It's cost effective. The other nonprofits, I guess I haven't addressed those, but I don't think that's competing for dollars in anyone's programs. Those are gaming dollars. We can't plug enough of that money in to create a balanced, no tax asking budget. And once again, through the years, we cut that. A community is as strong as all of our members, as all of our members. And this is just not that much money in a $54 million budget, but it's a lot of money to those organizations that rely on it. So I guess we have a difference of opinion on how we can
They
help
are
our community
very
grow.
worthy programs, and I can't stress that enough. But the county is to be concerned with countywide programs. Some of these nonprofits, because of their size, they don't have the budget of the county or a city. They cover their area, they cover their niche, and they do it very well. But to ask someone in Danbury to pay for something in another city, that matters to that community. And the same with Mobile paying for another community. That's what we have set up here, is a function of county government supporting and favoring different communities. And without the resources to truly make it equitable across all the different communities, I don't think it's a healthy precedent to set going forward.
I do notice that city government, City of Sioux City is not petitioned in the same way that our county government has been for these dollars. And the other thing that I think the public should be aware of is MERD. It's $3.8 million. Less than 10%. If we're really serious about this, then our MERD members, less than 10% of your entire annual budget, could take care of this. In fact,
I can't address MERD money today, but.
Right, but I'm saying if we want to truly hold anyone harmless, that would be certainly an avenue. And then the other thing I think that needs to be taken very seriously is that I hear, well, people will be laid off from a certain organization if this doesn't come through, as if we are holding the purse strings. That's not true. And the reason that it's not true is now that there's an RFP process, what if that certain organization, the Sanford Center, is not awarded those monies through the RFP process? Will we still be responsible for a program that hasn't otherwise exercised more fiduciary responsibility in raising those funds privately? And so those would be some things that I would advocate for those who do have a very sizable non-taxing budget to seriously consider, because we think these programs are worthy, but think that they ought not be taxpayer funded. And
They should absolutely be, this program should absolutely be taxpayer funded, because it is going to be taxpayer funded at some point in time, and it's going to be called incarceration.
do you have
And you know why we're being
do you have data
petitioned,
that
Jeremy?
bears that out?
It's just common sense. I mean, yes, I think we can, probably it's somewhere. You go to the Casey Foundation, they have a lot of data from a lot of states.
On disproportionate racial incrimination, but not on how a certain nonprofit in Sioux City.
If I liken it to crime on the streets. All right, crime is down. Are we going to pull off half of our police officers because crime is down? No, we're not going to do that. That flies in the face of what we all intuitively know is part of the working piece. So to go down that road is somewhat difficult, but I think it speaks to we have to have very good data collection. You know, and that's a piece that needs to be tightened up. And that was actually on the Prevention Commission, that was the next piece that we were going to go down that road if we're so, you know, if the commission still is in existence, was to tighten up the criteria, tighten up the oversight of whoever is awarded the RFP, if there is one, you know, executed. So, you know, there's always
I have an issue that's extremely large in my mind, and that's mental health. We have more mentally ill people than we can work with. They're in the jail, they're in the juvenile detention, they're in the hospitals, and we're so underfunding that whole area. Why aren't we covering that? I mean, it's terrible.
Mark, I've been involved with this for almost 30 years, and it is addressed, it's continually being addressed.
Mental health?
Yes.
Oh, come on. Are we addressing mental health in the jail?
We haven't.
You were at a meeting over at the library.
Yeah, we're starting now, right.
That's been an ongoing thing. There hasn't been any money to fund it.
Right.
Now with the new region, you can fund it, and that is being discussed.
What about facilities to
We
help
tax,
these people?
we tax for 3
We close
days.
them.
We tax, that's the state. I can't do what this, you know.
I'm
I don't have a
telling you,
vote
I
there.
think mental health is a big issue.
It is a big issue, it's huge.
And I don't
But we
disagree.
tax for $3.5 million for mental health. That's the maximum we can tax for. So how much more can we do legally? Nothing.
Okay,
I
I really don't want to, oh, excuse me.
I would just say that enforcement is the county's business, but prevention is the community's business. We're not preventing anyone else from supporting these, and I personally support nonprofits. I mean, it's a personal decision that we all have to make, and we'll be able to make more of those if the tax dollars are in your hands.
I'm involved with a lot of nonprofits, and they're all struggling. It's becoming to where they're going to have to start going together to create the ability with a little bit of money out there to provide that service. It's huge. Federal funds, state funds have all gone away for nonprofits, as well as an awful lot of the grant programs. More people are fighting for less grants than ever before. So nonprofits are in trouble. They've got a tough road ahead of them because they don't have those old supports. So they're coming up with fundraisers and stuff, and that's kind of the thing. I would open it up to the public, but maybe we could have one or two speak for it and one or two speak against it, so we can all get home by supper time. Dr. Owens.
I've been in the business over 60 years or 70 years, and it's always been a problem. It's not a new problem. The difference is that now, if you go into the literature and the research, we know how to save tax dollars. When you look at a few dollars that go to our program or to some of the other programs that are on this Core Plus, and you start cutting dollars there, it's minor. When you go into prevention, it's major. When you look at almost every one of these programs that they prevent, one of the programs I'm in, and you look at that and you say, well, they can't prevent. Well, if you look at the people we're serving, 20% of those parents are disabled. They work part-time jobs, and without our program, they can't work. When they don't work, they go back on welfare. When you start looking at all of the programs that have the potential of keeping people out of prison, it's very simple. We pay $33,000 per year. We keep them in there 3 to 5 years. 60% of those people are disabled in prisons. Look at the number that goes back that fails because we have no programs, 80%. You take one person, go to prison, keep them there, $100,000. Every program that you are funding is basically a preventing program. If you look at, and you make a great point, but if something happens in Sioux City and Danbury doesn't have that program, that person ends up in prison, every person sitting here pays. When you look at how to save tax dollars, you're looking too narrow. As I say, I've been in this in 60, 70 years. I can go to state stuff and start looking at research. And let's get off this concept that we can save 50,000 here, 10,000 here. When you cut the program, and like Jackie said, 5, 6 years, that same thing's gonna go 200,000. That's all I'm saying. You better believe in quality of life. And the people that I work with, and a lot of you have worked with in the past, this is their lifeline. This is true, what Mark says, mental health. I'm in the mental health field, more on the intellectually disabled side. But I work also on the mental health side. I've worked in the prison systems. I've worked with disability people that attorneys ask me to come in and talk. Half of those people should never be in prison. We do not have a system go. So before you throw everything out, I would suggest that we begin to truly look at what's needed in this community and don't sit and based on your past perceptions. Your past perception, as I look at it, is this has something to do with what the prior board did and what you're going to do. That's water under the bridge. The election's over. Start looking at the people in this community and what we really need. And when you do, and you honestly look at it, come out and visit with us so you really know what it is. When you get done, these programs will not be cut.
Thank you.
One more? Oh, Richard Owens. I'm doing that for the record. State your name and address.
Fitzgrant 807, South Paxton. Very difficult for me to get up here this morning and speak because I've been serving Siouxland youth for the last 24 years. And when we first started this program, I was one of the 2 or 3 outreach workers that took guns out of the schools. Any one of you guys had to talk a kid down and say, don't bring a gun to school, don't shoot your classmates? I had to do that. We need this program. We need this program in Woodbury County. I've seen the good in this program. I've seen the good in this program. I've given my life for this program. My life has been threatened for this program to save these kids in which we work with. We need this program. I've seen kids that should have been in prison, but right now they're general managers in the city. I've seen kids that should have went to prison, but now they're graduating from Briarcliff University. I need you today to value our young people, to value them, to tell them that their life means something. I need you today. I need to go back to my kids and say, you know what? Woodbury County Supervisor valued you today. They wanted to fund that program so you can be successful, so you can be somebody. That's what I need today. I've given my life, and I'm emotional, but we need you guys to help our kids. Our kids. Kids that look like me, that look like people sitting out here today. That's what we need. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Fitz. George, state your name, address.
George Sayo, 5000 Orleans Avenue, Sioux City, Iowa. I want an original worker for the gang outreach program. I want to second every single word that Fitz Grant and Dr. Baldwin said. That's my words. I think that if you can save an individual from killing 10 or 15 innocent kids or adults, the tax dollars, whether it's from Sioux City alone or Woodbury County as a whole, I think it's worth it above and beyond a lifetime. I think it would be a mistake for our county to not have the funding for this program. That would be same different than we take all the sheriff and police officer off the street. We just work different angle. The final word I want to say is that we can not only just provide the English teacher for East High School. We need the English teacher for West High, North High, Bishop Heelan, and every single high school in Sioux City. So one person cannot cover all. One program cannot cover all. One sheriff deputy cannot cover all. One police officer cannot cover all. So we need programs. Again, this is my life as well. I see people, like Fitz said, that should be in prison, but they're not. They become a very productive citizen. I will tell you this, the first guy I work with is a Caucasian. This is so, you talk about mental health. They live in a mobile home, Highway 75 North, 1992. Mom and dad divorced, they cannot move out. Dad live on this side of the mobile home, it's two-bedroom home. Mom live over here. The kids going over here one night, kids go down the bedroom the other night. That kids always remember what this program have done for him. And he become a very hard worker, productive worker, at one point for years at TW Type. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, George. All right, I will put these on the agenda for next week.
Can I say something?
Sure. State your name.
My name is Courtney Boykin, 109 South Dorman Street. We need this program because when I leave my home, I feel safe. I live not too far from where a young man wrestled with an officer and later took his life. I know this program is there for the good. I don't understand you, Mr. Taylor. In your campaign, you were said family first. This is family first. Mr. I remember when my father, George Boykin, his last day of his meeting, you said to him, George, if there's anything I can do, let me know. Well, I'm speaking. Courtney Boykin is speaking, and I'm saying, Mr. You said if there's anything you could do, well, this is what I'm asking. For everyone. Not for me, for everyone. So when you leave your home, Mr. Munson, you leave your home, you're safe. Because we have to start somewhere. I work in a healthcare profession, and sometimes we lose sight of what we're there for. What we're there for is our customers. What we're there for is our children. It starts there. I grew up in the Sanford Center, and just because I'm George's daughter doesn't mean I couldn't get out there and do some of the bad things. I'm just as capable as anybody else. But I didn't. I did the right thing. I was a single parent. I put family first, just like you, Mr. Taylor. Family first. I raised 2 children with no child support, was not on welfare. Family first. So I'm asking, I understand mental health. My mother was in mental health for years, worked at Dr. Dean's office. I understand mental health. Mental health does need it. Because some of these children could be mentally ill, and they're stopping it. So I ask today, Mr. Mr. Taylor, Mr. Munson, please say yes. We need this program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This will be on the agenda next week. All right, next item, secondary employment by county employees.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. This is a discussion and action item if needed, to be held on employees holding full-time employment in addition to full-time employment with the county. My understanding is Mr. Gilliland, our HR director, has come forward and has some further information that may desire action, if the board so pleases.
We do. We started with the forms that we had discussed in general. We do have forms that discuss outside employment and potential conflicts of interest. I pass those around. Then I also have forms that would address secondary employment. Also, would like to share with everybody. Then we also have a guide for conflict of interest. Conflict of interest is something a great deal more than just whether you have outside employment or not. And we kind of want to give everybody a guide to that, so that when you sign off on these, say that you don't have a conflict of interest, or that you may have something that could be viewed as a conflict of interest you'd just like to disclose, kind of gives you a general idea of what could constitute a conflict of interest. This is something you see in corporate America very frequently. It deals with boards people may serve on, deals with vendors that they may have revenue from, family members may have revenue from, so that everything's on the up and up and everybody's out in the open. Also, I do want to point out, when we look at the outside employment conflict of interest, essentially the first part here in blue, that's just a restate of our employment manual, our employment handbook. So it's nothing new. We're just kind of reminding everyone, and then we have people sign off that they understand and recognize the above policies in the employee handbook, that they've been given the conflict of interest policy. They recognize the areas of potential conflict of interest and realize that they must report any of these outside employment of any kind to the human resource director and to the department head or to their elected official that they report to. This is, I will provide immediate notice should I accept new outside employment or if my relationship with vendors whose business with Woodbury County should change. May also be a conflict of interest if my spouse, significant other, or close relative, owner, or employed by, serve on the board of, or have significant interest in a company, organization, or entity of any kind which does business with Woodbury County. And then there's a form that just allows you to disclose that. It's just a restatement of policy from past. there always was that duty to report that outside employment to human resources. We just are trying to make it official now, and also disclose any potential conflicts of interest. It's just full disclosure and kind of shedding light on it.
So will you be keeping the records for all the county employees, or will each, I mean, who is going to collect this for the other elected officials, or are you, or is it
I
just
think
for?
that, this is something that I think is important. I think we can certainly collect it from everyone and discuss the various with the department heads. It's kind of I mean, there's a fair amount of task here.
Right.
And, but I think once we have that conflict of interest, it's just a matter of updating annually. It's something we should have in place, but now we just would collect this and then update annually. So that we're.
So the records will be in your, who keeps the records on all of this then? HR?
This has all been in place.
This has all been in place, it's just clarifying. So all it is clarification.
And this is something that would only be forthcoming if somebody was involved or engaged in secondary employment.
Or they had some sort of potential conflict.
Okay. So this isn't as if we're
Like
requiring every employee to fill this
No,
out? Okay.
you don't have to, but we're saying you do need to disclose it if you have it. And everybody should at least receive should receive the forms so they can see what they are and understand them. If it doesn't apply to them, it doesn't apply. There's no problem.
And my understanding is this has been vetted by our county attorney's office.
I have reviewed the documents, yes.
Do you find any?
No, I think it's basically an implementation of the policy that's already in the employee handbook, which all the employees get, but this is kind of the forms that carry out the policy.
Okay, we need a motion to accept.
I would move to accept all three forms as put forward by the HR director that we have in front of us.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Would you like to do this at the department head meeting?
Yes, I think it would be great.
You're on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Taylor and Mr. Butler, update on tax askings and tax rate implementation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, as we continue down the road of making sure that our tax rate is held flat as well as the total tax asking, I wanted to ask Mr. Butler to update us as to where we're currently at. And then I'd also like to ask for an agenda item, but I'll wait until you give the presentation of where are we currently at, Mr. Butler.
Okay, with our tax asking, we've done several cuts. Unfortunately, the cuts we're doing are cuts in the general basic fund where we are at our maximum levy, which does cause a tax increase of $203,000 approximately. So what we're trying to do in the general basic fund is balance revenue to expenditures. So far, we have cut approximately about $95,000 in expenditures to help offset. So we did start at $919,503. We are now down to $822,044. We did cut approximately a little over $92,000 last week. We got a lot, quite a ways to go. Today, when I make up the sheet for next week, any changes we make today, I'll reflect either on expenditures versus revenues, or if it affects taxes, we'll reflect it on there also. Today's action with the health insurance will affect basically our shortfall in budget to revenue on the general basic, which will vary year to year with the insurance holidays. Second, the insurance holiday will help our tax asking, which will even be lesser of a tax asking. I think right now we're at $190,000, so $45,000 more will have a decrease of over about $230,000. Rural basic, we got $14,000 there. We're at a flat tax asking increase currently. That will actually have a tax decrease of $14,000 now. So any cuts we do in our funds other than general basic will affect the tax asking. Any cuts or other revenues we use in general basic will balance out our expenditures with revenues. And that's kind of our key goals. You heard today, using cash reserves will be very difficult because we have an obligation to the RISE grant where we're going to make a temporary loan of $700,000. That'll drive our cash reserves down well below our desired level, but that money will be returned to the general basic fund over a period of years once the CF, our base starts growing there. So we know we're gonna have a lesser cash reserve in general basic. That's just a fact, but it's also gonna be as a receivable coming back to be paid back on our financials. It just won't be cash there to spend for a while. So that's kind of where we're at now.
Tell me again, how much over are we in general basic?
We are currently
What do you need?
822,000.
122,000 over?
822,000.
822,
Yes.
so,
Yep.
and just
And
for,
today, we'll knock down 259,000 of that revenue, because we're gaining revenue by using that tax holiday or insurance holiday, moving the cash in there, take it out of the individual budgets, we do amendments so they can't spend the money, goes back to reserves. So our reserves will reflect slight increase there, and we've obligated this several years ago, doing this holiday and then put it back to the taxpayer.
So then we'd be down to about 562, 168.
Pretty close, yep.
I didn't do that math in my head.
and we're at the cap. And
And we are at the
we're at
cap.
the cap, so even if you cut out, I just want to go back, digress a minute, for the nonprofit funding, that really does not solve our problem in the general basic.
Correct.
fund.
The nonprofits that are funded with gaming revenues will not affect us. We actually have not put any gaming appropriation into our general basic, because if we do, it'll be funded.
You said nonprofits through our gaming revenues,
Yes, the nonprofits.
but we have two nonprofits
Right.
that are through taxation.
Yeah, and that taxation
And
is
general
in general
supplemental.
supplemental, which even if we cut them or leave them, won't affect our problem in the general basic.
We can offset to have a total tax asking that's lesser, correct?
Yes. And you're having an increase in general basic, but we also got a decrease in
Right,
other funds.
right. So all told cumulatively is what,
Yeah,
okay.
total right now, we're at 290, I believe in our tax asking, we're about 298,000 more taxes overall.
So asking taxpayers for $298,000 more than we did last year. If I'm a regular guy in the street.
Yes.
And we're, okay.
For county functions, that's how much more taxes we have to levy. And a lot of that's coming from growth. But when we do have a tax decrease or hold flat, our levy rates will automatically go down.
Should be a good thing.
But we have more revenue because valuations are up,
Correct.
if we want to utilize it.
If we kept our,
Taxes go up. There's no.
if we kept our tax rates flat, same levy rate we're levying now, we'd be able to generate approximately 500,000 more revenue. The thing you have to be careful, and I've talked to other finance people, things like that, with government, we are obligated to several things such as contract things. If we don't levy, if we hold our tax asking flat, all those increases have to come from other places such as additional revenues or cuts or cash reserves. That's the bottom line on that really. But right now, everything's built into our budget. So we're right at a point where we're 298,000 more tax asking, and the only problem we really have is our shortfall in general basic.
So we've got some work to do.
Yes.
To make this very simple, we've got to cut about $300,000 from programs that we've received the budgets to. We've got to go back and cut that out. Otherwise, you've got to break the cap.
I completely agree. One of the things that I asked Dennis to look at as we've been receiving budgets is to go through and look at FY 2015 budgets that at this point in the year have not spent 50%. And I understand that there are some times where later in the year you make a bulk purchase or there's ammunition or office supplies. I understand that. But I think as a tool, it may be helpful to put on the agenda for next week. It would not be appropriate to look at this right now or to ask for any sort of action, but just wanted to see if you could explain just in very short what this document does and how it might help provide and guide us.
What?
I was just saying, generally, when we go through the budgeting line by line and we see that there's a history of not using it the prior 2 years and it's halfway through and it's very low, we cut it right then and there. Now, this time around, we did not do that. For whatever reason, we have received all those budgets with very little scrutiny on those, but they have been scrutinized and pared down in years past. So you're going to kind of categorize, I guess, put all on one sheet, but it isn't that, that hasn't been done, because it has.
And what I've done there upon request by Jeremy is go through line by line item by budget
anything I took the current year budget, what they current to date, and what they budget next year. I also went back and looked at the history of the last 2 actual totals, and I came up with some recommendations there, and that's all they are, is recommendations. The board has to act on them. Well, I only did general basic at this point in time to show what it could be. Now, there's some items I did not include. I'll give you an example. In Pat's office there, office supplies, this may be true in a couple of them there, that office supplies generally are brought in the end of May or June because they see how much money they have left, then they get what they need to help carry into next year. So this happens every year. Another thing, say with travel in Pat's office, his major expenses on travel, because I know the situation, is we have the spring school ISAC. This is true in all the budgets, but they also has what they call HUG conference, which is HTE users group. That's really a necessity. Send somebody there because this is where you can get together and put your recommendations, changes to our software packages if it affects everybody. A lot of times some of them are adopted, but these are expenses that are shown, but I did not include those. I knew they exist.
Well, and the other thing that I asked Dennis to compile are utilities, because we had 0 placed in, and I understand the challenges that building services had with some of those, but they, and I compliment them for it, delivered information to Dennis so that we can see over a 3-year rolling average what those would look like, where we haven't spent 50% of the utility budget. And just informationally, there's about $153,000 worth of potentials, and that's all they are. But I thought that that's something I would like to see placed on the agenda, and just wanted to.
On utilities, there's 153,000?
No.
Oh,
there's
overall.
Overall, and some of those utilities are included in the document.
And to give you an example on there, the building service, Mike had his secretary down there, did put together about a 5-year history. So what I did there, I took 3 previous years that are actuals, totaled them up for gas and electric by building, divided them by 3, get an average. Then I took the current year. There were 6 months through or 7 months through, total, divided by 7 or 6, where it took it times 12, and that's where it came up approximately about 45,000 more cuts there. In one building, it will hit right on the button when it's running. Now, this will vary with your extreme weather in winter and summer, but on the average, and that's kind of what we got to go on the average, because we're looking for money. This is what I did with that. Also, we were talking about maybe bulk buying custodial supplies instead of each department going out and buy separate. They go out and buy through building services bulk. They'll serve all of our county buildings. They still get it delivered to their places, but buying bulk, when you buy, say, 100,000 toilet tissue rolls instead of buying 4 or 5, there's obviously could be some savings there.
Now, we're going to get to that later.
Right. Sewer and water, or the sewer, garbage collections. Everybody bids out their own, or not bids, they may just go get them. What we're gonna do there is consolidate them all together, maybe leaving each individual department would have a group lump sum where we go out and bid this out.
Who's we? When you keep saying
The
we're
board.
gonna do this.
No, the board.
I didn't know if there was a working group working on this, or?
No, building service would be the only one working on it. To get the information together, come back to the board, and then the board would receive bids on services, and then they'd approve, if it's Gil or independent or solid waste, whoever, potentially we could save some money there, potentially. Instead of every individual go on and do their own thing, it's a possibility.
Thank you for all your work on this. Appreciate it.
Do we have that somewhere in our paper?
No, this
You
is
just
just
have it,
has to
okay.
be placed on the next agenda, and then I would assume then that Dennis will provide that.
It'll be in the packet, yes.
Citizen concerns. Okay, board concerns and comments? You're up.
I'm back again. I did pass out today purchasing of gas and diesel by county departments. And I'll just go through this real quick here. It won't take long to go through it. And I want to thank Todd Wick. I worked with him over the Sheriff's Department. We did talk to Tina down in Arkansas, who was kind of head of this program. And what I'll do is go through it real quick here. And I'll probably read it pretty much, so everybody outside here knows what we're talking about. And this is only for this information. I'd like to see it potentially be on the agenda next week to maybe adopt this recommendation. So what we're talking about here is buying gas and getting a federal tax reduction off the gas.
So how the program works, each department will sign up for the program. Processing usually takes a week to get this done. Every county vehicle would have a credit card assigned to each vehicle that could potentially be left in the vehicle in a secure place. Then each eligible driver, determined by the elected official or department head of that vehicle, would have a PIN number assigned. Each individual PIN number could work on one or more vehicles. Give you an example, in the sheriff's office, when I talked to Todd, there's cars over there that have a credit card in there, but there may be 5 employees that have the PIN number. So when they go to this car and go to get gas, they put the card in. Now we get the advantages here. They put the card in, they enter their PIN number, the odometer meter reading, and then they can charge gas. When you get down here further, you'll see a little bit more why this is advantageous. So whatever the department or elected official so desires is who will have the PIN number to use that credit card. The driver of the county vehicle, I guess I did number 4 already, but driver of the county vehicle would pull up to the gas pump, swipe the card, enter your PIN number and the vehicle's odometer reading, pump your gas, and then you go about your county business. We'll get back into the bookkeeping here in a minute. Almost every service station uses the Voyager program. It will show on the gas pump that they use it. In the county, I believe most service stations, according to Todd, is covered through the Voyager, and nationwide there's 316,000 plus stations that use the Voyager program. Advantages to the county. There's no cost to the county. The service stations are the one that pay the fee for having the opportunity to have this program available to attract business to their station. Obviously, most stations have it. There's total accountability. The invoice will show each county vehicle by department, who charged the gas or diesel, the odometer reading, miles per gallon consumed, calculates that out for you on the invoice, and the federal tax deduction on each purchase. We do not qualify for state tax deductions according to the laws. All we get is the federal tax. When purchasing gas or diesel, the full price is recorded at the pump, but when the purchase is processed by Finish Line Fleet, the federal tax is deducted. State gas tax is not deductible. The federal gas tax now is 18.3 cents per gallon, and diesel is 24.3 cents per gallon. And I did attach a monthly statement here to kind of show you. It's very, very detailed and very accountable. It breaks it down to the employee, what they're buying. It breaks down even the miles per gallon they use when they buy it, because you're taking odometer readings so they can keep track of that. This is service provided over 316,000 service stations. If a card is lost or broken, Voyager is contacted and a new card will be sent within 3 days by overnight mail at their cost. Control the PIN numbers are at the control of the elected official or the department head's discretion. The card can also be used for oil changes and vehicle maintenance. Obviously, I don't think there's federal tax on that, but they can use it there, so you still have accountability when they're changing oils, when they're doing vehicle maintenance, things like that. So I would like to recommend that this program be considered by the Woodbury County Board of Supervisors at a future board meeting and adopted. That's it. I think it's a great program. I think the sheriff thinks it's a great program, and when communication has worked very well.
And the exception is?
Yes.
Yeah.
We've already talked about you.
Okay,
Yeah, I didn't get this
understand
far.
most of our outsheds have their own diesel and gasoline tanks.
So you don't want to drive a motor grader 15 miles to get fuel?
I don't want to drive a Hampton or Odo to Smith, London, so that they can use a credit card. So, as far as our engineering staff, we're using Right Express right now as our fuel purchasing. Very similar program, although we have to file for our own federal tax application. So if we want to switch the engineering vehicles, that wouldn't be a big deal. That would be where we could participate within the program. But with some of the other groups where there's dry business involved for our vehicles, it wouldn't be practical.
We're going to have to, I would suggest we take it to the department meeting on Monday.
Okay, thank you.
And as an information item, see where the bumps are.
Mm-hmm. And the
And
one
bring it
nice
back.
thing about it, the departments don't have to file for the federal tax refund. There's probably some departments may have 1 or 2 or 3 vehicles that probably not follow theirs, just didn't think about doing it, but this takes care of the problem. It's automatic and they do all the accounting for us.
Okay.
That's all I got. Thank you.
We have a consensus to work our way through this so it can come back. It's a no-brainer to me. All right. We need to adjourn
Mr. Chair, just one more thing, board concerns and comments.
Yes.
A moment. I just wanted to check and see, I realize that we haven't quite made the transition downstairs quite yet. And I appreciate Mr. Clausen asking the question today because we had a full crowd and we didn't have the video services ready. What I'm wondering is we have budget on today and the 10th and 17th. Would it be something that we could visit perhaps on the next agenda as far as possibly making the move downstairs but keeping the same time since we have so much budget worked in? And I just wanted to put that out there as something that we might take up on the next agenda, not to move it today, but something to consider anyway.
When is the equipment supposed to come in?
It got shipped Friday, so it should be this week.
Well, we could move locations irrespective of the time.
Right. So you were saying stay at 10 o'clock for the next at least 2 weeks?
That would be a suggestion, but again, I'm not trying to bring up anything for voting or anything like that. I just thought it'd be a suggestion that maybe we could visit about next week and put on the agenda.
Anybody have a problem with that?
No, if it's ready, I don't see any reason not to move down.
Right. But leaving it at 10 for the budget? All right, we'll just do it. So it'll be the 17th, we'll meet at 10. The next one will go to the new time. Okay.
And I also think maybe today we know, even regardless of when the meeting time is, if people are interested in a topic, they will find their way here.
You betcha. Okay, need a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Need a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
It's a recess.
Move to recess.
It's a recess, excuse me. We're going into recess and begin Orton Slough Drainage District meeting.
But don't have adjourn next time. Throws us off.
Yep. All right, need approval of the January 27th Orton Slough minutes.
What's that?
I don't know if I wanted to call the roll. I recognize everybody.
We need a motion to approve the minutes of the Orton Slough for January 27th.
Move it.
Need a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Need a motion to close the Orton Slough meeting.
So moved.
Need a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Do you want a break?
I could use a break.
I second.
Do we want to take a lunch break or just get into it?
I don't think you have a lot of time. This isn't gonna take very long.
Let's just stay with it then. 5-minute break? Yes, sir.
Yeah, Don Weeks, Woodbury County Fair. As you've seen, we sent our letter of request in, and we upped it a little bit this year due to what the other county fairs, the average of the other county fairs in the state of Iowa. So there's 105 regional and county fairs in the state of Iowa, and the granted average was $25,110. That's an increase of $1,482 over the past year, what we requested.
You say that's based on what?
What the average of the regional and county fairs, 105 regional and county fairs in the state of Iowa, not counting Iowa State Fair. Iowa State Fair is not included in that amount. But each of the county fairs was given an average county aid of $25,110. I think last year, whatever you take $1,462 away, or $1,482 away from that would be what we requested last year. And this year, we're respectfully asking consideration for $25,110. Some information that was given to us at the Association of Iowa Fairs annual meeting in December in Des Moines. just as a one, and I'm just using averages here, I don't want to take anything to numbers that, you know, that's hard to back, or not necessarily hard to back, but just, you know, how did you arrive at them? But anyway, the state of Iowa, this is from Tom Barnes for the Executive Director of Iowa Association of Fairs, total statewide economic impact realized from the 105 county and regional fairs was 272, about 7.5 million, 272.75. So that would make an average for each 105 of the 105 county fairs of 2.597 million per fair of economic impact. And that doesn't count any of like the private vendors that come in, and that's just what the fair itself generated, an average number.
Could this be taken out of lost funds and all be funded by that? Does it fall under the realm of?
I think there's one county that does that. It's a very rural county, but one county out of 99 does do that.
Because it is an economic tool for our county. It's-
I would agree. I mean, and I'm, of course, I'm biased, Jackie. I understand.
But I've been out there enough to know it's a great thing for the county.
Is that something that we can look into as far as the statutory?
Yeah.
I,
Local options to be used insofar as practicable for economic development out in the rural areas. We use it kind of all over for economic development, but
this is an ongoing yearly expense. This
Yes.
should be put.
yes. And we actually use lost funds for economic development and planning and zoning, which is ongoing too.
So many counties do it out of rural services?
One. And one does our local option, the rest of them are all basic, general basic.
I'm gonna move to receive, but that can go on some list of something to look at maybe before the
Which are you receiving?
25.
110? Well, you got my easy.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You have a second?
Well, we haven't done it yet.
Oh, okay.
Mark Nero, Woodbury County Engineer. There is one area that I've had to come back to the.
Hold on.
Did we get a second?
No. Need a second?
Sorry.
I'll second for discussion.
We've had to come back to the board each year for the secondary roads department does all of the dirt work in the drain sand area, or the motocross, the Big Rig Raceway, the tractor pull, and typically that costs between $2,900 and $3,200 a year. That's just in labor and fuel. He prepared his budget this year in response to the board's instruction last year to not include that in his budget. But at some point in time, we need to think about budgeting that. Right now, I have to ask you guys for a bill every year to cover that cost.
Was it included last year?
It was not.
It's never been included.
It's never been included. It's always something I had to come back and Dennis has worked with us to get it reimbursed.
Okay, what we obligated this year by board action, we did obligate $3,000 for the item you're talking about out of local option sales tax funds. So we have used local option sales tax funds for fairground.
For that reimbursement. I didn't know if that's something you should be looking at now with this budget, or if you just want me to come back every year with what our expenses were and deal with it at that point. There's really nobody else that can do this job for them. We have the equipment, we have been getting some of the equipment subsidized by Murphy Tractor. They've been bringing in a motor grader and other equipment that's supplementing some of ours and freeing it up to do its job on the roads. But there is trucks that we aren't able to supplement for some of the bigger events they have. And I don't know how they get this set up with volunteer labor from police.
We are. We're very.
So, are you suggesting we include this in the fair?
That way, it would be simpler for us to bill them each year. We wouldn't have to come and ask special permission to the board each year to get reimbursement for that.
And you say it's between 29 and
3,200. 3,000 a year, I think we could get it done. We monitor it each year. It's bounced between 2,700 and 2,900, just allowing for the extra cost of labor this year.
Now, what if they don't pay you if we put it in their money?
Well, then I would be here next year and say, well, so.
do you have funds to pay him to do that? Can you find that in the budget?
We'd have to go out and do fundraising to pay for it.
Don't have it just sitting around.
No, unfortunately, we don't.
I'm a little uncomfortable granting an increase based on a statewide average. I'm not saying you don't need it, but I'd like to hear perhaps from the need base more than just to keep up with the Joneses sort of thing.
Well, I guess, Matthew, I can probably, I guess I'll take it to a little bit of a right local level. Our neighboring county to the north, and I think you probably know which one I'm talking about, Lamar's, they're funded to the tune of a little over 40,000 from their county. That's our direct competition.
I've heard about them.
I'm sure you have. And I mean, it's not done in a bad way as competition, it's just that we like to keep up and we like to be created equal, because if we don't, are we going to get the amount of people to come to the county fair? And are we going to be able to keep an upward trend? You know, we've had 3 great years, and our attendance is growing every year. Our number of exhibitors is growing every year, and to me, that's a pretty good economic thing for Woodbury County. Certainly for Mobile, you know, I can relate to that, you know. And I guess we just want to be on an equal playing field with all the counties around. I mean, I'm using averages. I mean, I hesitate always to bring in and single out somebody, as I just did. But at the same time, it's always nice to be on a level playing field. I don't care what you're doing. If you've got the referees against you in a ballgame, you're kind of in trouble, you know. And so I guess I you know, as long as we all can, and I'm talking averages. That's all I brought up was averages. I'm not trying to put us on the high level. I mean, we're ranked in the top 10 fairs in the state of Iowa. Woodbury County is. County fairs.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to set the budget at, receive this at $25,110.
I'm gonna vote against this because I would vote for what you had last year, but I'm not looking to give you an increase, so you know ahead of time.
But Larry, I'm not gonna change the motion to include the extras, so in a way, it's not an increase, because from what I understand, this is what you'll get, and you'll have to pay secondary roads.
But it's always been that way, hasn't it?
You know, see what I mean? If he wants it, it'll have to come out of their budget to,
That wasn't in your motion.
no, can I?
You want to amend your
I didn't
motion?
know about that, I'll amend it.
We do that?
However.
You're going in
you
the
can
hole
make
in
it.
this one.
You might go in the hole in this one. Uh-huh.
Can we amend it?
I don't know how to.
What is the
Just to
amendment?
include all the costs, to include the secondary roads costs.
So you're amending it for,
As submitted plus the cost of.
No, not plus.
The way I think what she's saying is 25,110 will include the 3,000
Yes,
we've
thank
been
you.
given on local option.
Perfect.
So actually, you're actually getting less.
Sorry.
With this-
We're actually getting about $1,500 less.
Yes, with
$1,500.
this motion.
I'll
Nice.
second.
Well,
That's pretty tricky.
essentially, all you're doing is
Moving that to them.
moving the motion as, the budget as submitted. That's what you're.
Right, I believe so.
Yes.
What-
That you have, what wording in there is that you're not gonna be able to, because what has happened in the past is Mr. Mara comes back and he amends the budget, and you approve that expenditure from local option sales tax for that. So all you're doing now is you move to accept the motion as submitted, I mean, the budget as submitted,
Will that motion say with that stipulation?
if that's what you want to include.
I think I'm just gonna, my motion is just to receive the budget as is.
We can change these
Right.
numbers.
I
at
mean,
any
I'm just
time.
gonna keep the original
A
motion.
friendly amendment, I move to receive the motion at the request of the prior year's budget.
Except we have a motion and an amendment.
He's amended that motion, now
Okay.
he needs a second to
Hearing no second. We have a motion to accept $25,110 as the tentative budget, or budget received. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Uh-oh.
I would move we receive the budget at the last year.
23,628. Need a second?
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
So we're at square one. And we did,
We'll figure out the
the
other.
3,000 is out there floating in at this point?
Yes.
Okay.
Could you please get their bill in for this last fair tomorrow?
I've got the bills.
So we need to pay, and we pay that local office, we'll send the bill to the board office. Send the bill to the board office, yeah.
All right, here we go.
Thank you.
Soil conservation, Louis. Full disclosure, my wife is the pie superintendent at the fair.
Yes, Louis Byers, I just want to get approval of my report that I submitted. I assume you maybe reviewed earlier. And if there was any questions or concerns there that you saw from the report, then just continue getting your support.
Well, it's very well done.
Thank you.
Yes.
I move to receive this budget.
Need a second?
Second.
Having experienced what you do, tromping all over Kingdom Come,
Yes.
this is a pretty cheap price. And Mr. Guard, of course,
He's the chairman of the SWCD, and part sponsors my position, and I answer him monthly.
We listen to the story.
Yeah.
all right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Leave while you're ahead.
All right, all right, thank you very much.
Would you two be interested in a tour of the county sometime in the spring?
Or I would.
Yes, I would, so we would.
It's
Matthew won't be able to meet you.
it's worth your time. It's interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. District Health.
On this particular one, all the board has an obligation to is fund what they request. It's your desire whether you want to do the full funding, reduce it. If you reduce it, they have to go back and amend their budget. Otherwise, their budget's about 150 pages long, and their board actually sets their budget. This board does have a representative on the district health board.
Hey, good afternoon. Kevin Green, Director of the Stone District Health Department. I guess what's proposed out there, the 1%, just to explain the increase that we have is, as a district health department, we do occupy a county facility at 1014 Nebraska, which is a county building. We're very thankful that in 2002 that worked with the County Board of Supervisors to purchase that. Since that point in time, we have been paying rent on that facility also. So the 10 years have eclipsed, we put the paid $800,000 back. Also an additional $800,000 were actually our third time of paying off the building. So one thing that I'd like to emphasize and help the board understand is the fact that we do cover essentially at this point in time all expenses related to it. That includes the maintenance, the upkeep, where our roof is less than 7 years old. HVAC units are about 5 years old. We have done some interior work within that for improvements, the parking lot resurfaced, the retaining wall reconditioned. These are all things that we do to sustain and maintain it. And any of you that would be interested, we'd be thrilled to give you a tour to see the quality of the facility that we maintain. And so that's what's included within what we do with the amount budgeted to us. Another part within our budget, as Dennis mentioned, the 150 pages, we're about 45% tax funded, and the rest is through grants and fees. So what we had done within that, just so that we're equitable with the tax dollars that we expend, is we do a space allocation out to all of our grant programs. So it's not like the taxpayer pays for 100% of the building costs. We do adjust that out and charge it out to the different grants and the programs that we run. And so that is one of the things that we've been to be judicious with the funds that are given us. So I would entertain any questions any board member may have.
22,000 basically salary increases.
Pretty much, yes.
Yes. We looked at a 2% is what it was this year. That was up 1.5 from last year, and that includes, yeah, really just that cost of living increase.
Discussion?
Who's our appointee to the district health board?
That is still up in the air as far as, I mean, it was previously, it was a George, and I'm looking through within this is another board member to be appointed onto the Board of Health, because within Iowa code, they need to be
Yeah.
appointed by the Board of Supervisors so that they can be a voting member. Right now, you've indicated with the list a liaison type thing. So it's, the Board of Health has requested and appreciates having a Board of Supervisor member on there. However, it is not a mandate. So that if there is not filled by a Board of Supervisor member, I will go back to the community and recruit a resident to fulfill our board membership of 7.
Jeremy, I think, is the one that,
Right, that's, I wasn't sure, and we haven't, and I didn't know, were you going to put that on the agenda for an official appointment, I guess is what I was
Right.
looking at. So it's reflected in the minutes, just like you did Judy when you renewed hers, is I think what I was looking in that area. Yes, Dennis?
One question needs to be brought up. It kind of pertains to budget a little bit and it doesn't, but it does pertain to budget. When we go through, this took law about 2-3 years ago, they can have a 25% reserve by law. Anything over that, after we do our accrued expenses, see what their accrued balance is. This last year is 217,000, year before it's 300-some thousand over. They did reimburse us. There's been a question when I talked to Kevin, raised a little bit, because this year it's 368,000, or approximately 360,000 to reimburse the county. That money would go into the general basic fund. They're also proposing potential $300,000 in that range, I think, improvements to the building up there, which really should come back to their board and also back to this board, because this board owns the building. They're paying rent, but you own the building. My thoughts were to run the CIP if they have, they're gonna get bids and do architect, and I think the board should approve that, because your building, is put that on our CIP loan that we do to improve our county buildings, and then take the $300-some thousand back in our general basic fund with the potential, as we have in the past with those funds, use it for revenue increase to offset our differentials. That's what that boils down to.
so you don't lose.
What's that?
You don't lose.
Well, yes, that's what, and it's the, I mean, the whole part of it is that I know last year the Board of Health looked at a cash basis, and I think this year it was 317,000. We had looked at, we are in the process of getting, for basically improved services and also additional services, these renovations within the facility. That is under works. We'll be bringing that back to the board, this board, for review and for approval of those. And it was in Dennis and my conversation is, I wasn't quite sure the direction or what interest the board would have related to as far as us being able to get those done. Technically, I think, Dennis, with the code, there's no cap anymore, is what it would be on that 25%. It's just that we have tried to function within the county's guidelines of a 20 to 25%, and that's why that additional funds have come back to the county to be put in the general fund. But this was the Board of Health was just concerned with the aspect, not sure the direction of what the Board of Supervisors would be taken to say, do we want to give up the cash if we know we can be able to get these renovations done with your approval to the structure and have them paid for or going through the CIP process? So that's part of what we're trying to get worked out. Right now I'm just in the process of plan design to get an idea of what's, because I didn't want to come to you till I had an estimated cost of what they're proposing to do. So we're working with the RML architect to come up with those.
So that will be in the CIP discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, yeah, if we'd have Jeremy put on the agenda for next week to have him approved, the District Health Board, because we look to who our representative is to come back with the information and recommendations, then I don't have a problem either way that goes.
Okay. Yes, that could be put on place in the agenda.
We've actually already approved that, but that's okay, we can do it again.
Okay.
All right,
All right, thank you.
do we have a motion?
Move it.
Need a second?
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay.
Mr. Chair, does that really need to be on the agenda if we've already approved it?
No, it doesn't need to be.
Is it considered approved? I mean, is the list of committee reps, is that?
Yes, approved.
Those are approved, and those are considered appointments into those committees. That's what I was never sure with the language for certain to know exactly what the standing of those were. So those are officially approved.
Sign him up.
Okay, then we'll get you the information, your contact on there, and in fact, our first meeting is tomorrow at noon.
Because we do it both ways, depending depending on
Yes.
what.
Yeah, it's been done both ways.
If
That's
we
what
do
I
it
was just
both
kind
ways,
of
that's why.
following the standards. Okay, thank you.
Juvenile detention.
Hello, Mark Olson, Juvenile Detention.
Hello?
Couple things just on my projected revenues for next year for detention. For my BIA in Dakota County with the cost increase, I'm expecting approximately $456,750 that would be brought in. Our annual JD reimbursement could be a little higher, a little lower, $350,000, and that's out of license reinstatement for fine for OWIs that comes through the state. Our GPS bracelet reimbursement, that's